We welcome to the show Marty Wilde. How's it going?
Very, very well. Thank you, Chris. Yep, going great at the moment. Yeah, I mean, I think probably these last few years have been some of the most productive and interesting years I think that I've had, which is strange, really, because the career has been a very long one. But this just over these last few years, I think I've had more satisfaction in what I'm doing because the shows and that everything's been going probably too well in a way. You get worried she's going too well, but it's been great. The last couple of years have been fantastic.
Great. So early this year, you was number one in the World Heritage Chart with Two Eyes Streaming. What can you tell us about the song and how happy was you that it reached number one in that chart?
Well, I wrote the song about a year and a half ago, and I got the title first. I had the title, and I was walking around thinking about the title, and I thought it's a good title, it's a positive title. And I thought, right. And then the subject had to be, and I could see it all really from, I always see my songs like a video. Most songs I see like a video, and I could see a key side. I mean, I always saw it like I don't know, atomic submarine, going away, and the soldier at the side, waving goodbye, and the child and the mother at the side of the quayside, and with the child in tears. And then I thought, well, a little bit of that applied to my life in a way. And during the war, my father was constantly on the move, and Mum and I were always trying to catch him up. So it kind of that's how that song started. And then to I wasn't I thought that it might do reasonably well. Like all my songs, I think, well, they'll do reasonably well, but it did better than that. And somehow it hit the audience. And, I was really very flattered, very thrilled, and very humbled.
Yeah, and you have a new single out called Rise. What can you tell us about it?
Rise is a song really about someone that's been put down really emotionally in love, and they really have got to get on their feet again. And I likened it to a bird that's been shot and that came down. So it was like it, and the song is around that kind of thing. And also at the end of the song, it talks about cherish your dreams, hang on to what you believe in, and try not to lose sight of what you really want to do in life, and what's really important. And but yeah, I mean, I'm very, very happy with him, and I spent a lot of time on the lyrics of the song. It's a quite a grown up song, really, and it's quite heartfelt. It's quite a deep, not deep, but it's a little bit different to Teenager in Love, put it that way.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So it's 65 years since you shot to the top of the charts with Teenager in Love, which spent 17 weeks in the chart. What were your memories of that time?
All great ones, really. I mean, it was just a great time for the country. I think for life, young people, what we were doing. It was every day was different. The song is not the most complicated song in the world, but people love it, and so often that happens. It's really strange. You look back on your life, and I marvel that some of the lyrics that we ever got away with, some of the lyrics which were really quite strange. But then when you look at some of the latest songs, that they will be looking at those, the generations now will be looking backwards in about 30 years' time, saying, "Oh my goodness me," that was a funny old lyric that we were all singing, and it's just it's an association of great times and events in your life. And Teenager in Love for me was an exciting time. I think the world was a much better place, and it certainly was less complicated than it is now. So yeah, it holds great memories, and
And
it's a great song.
yeah, it definitely is. And of course, Marty Wilde isn't your real name, is it? How did you get your stage name back then?
I got my name through my manager, who was Larry Parnes. Larry Parnes, my manager, didn't like Rich Smith, and I can understand why. And Reg Smith had to be changed, obviously, a bit like Elton John with Reg Dwight, I think he was. I was Reg Smith. So we had to change our names. And I wanted to be called Reg Patterson. I thought that would have been good enough as a rock and roller, but of course it wasn't. It wasn't. It wasn't anywhere near as good as the name that he gave me. And it's a name which I settled down to pretty quickly. And it wasn't until I hated it at first because it sounded very American. Marty, to me, sounded like some sort of soft red-faced kid, from America chewing gum, and then I thought, no, that's not me. But later on, when I was driving along the road and I saw a bill, and had my name on it, it's where I was appearing. And I thought, yeah, that's right. He got it dead right. I was wrong.
Yeah, and back then that happened a lot with singers, didn't it? I'm thinking of sort of like Richie Valenzuela. He was then called Richie Valance, wasn't he, in the rock and roll era? So it did happen quite a lot back then, didn't it?
Oh, a hell of a lot. Georgie Fame wasn't Georgie Fame, and I was Red Smith and not Marty Wilde. Ronald Wycherley was Billy Fury. I don't know what Cliff's real name was, but I don't think it was Cliff. And so it goes on, and I think it's probably a good thing in a way. I mean, I think there's nothing worse than coming out with a really bad. If you want to be noticed, then be noticed. If you're going to be in this business, be in the business. Don't sort of sing half measures and think, oh, no, I can't do that. I think go for it. So yeah, I was pleased I got it. But as I say, it took time for me to accept it. I think my mother accepted it almost immediately. She from a reg, in the next few days, she was calling me Marty. But my father, that took a bit longer, and I think also for my mates, even now to this day, when I meet old mates out on the street from way back, sometimes that happens, and they'll say, "Hi, Reg, how you doing?" And so that obviously that part of my life is still there.
Great. And who are some of the best people you've worked with over the years?
Some of the best people. Well, I mean, I've worked with some greats. I mean, Johnny Cash. I worked with Johnny. Johnny was a great one to work with. I worked with Brenda Lee. Brenda Lee was an absolute delight. Great voice, great records, and so was John, of course, Johnny Cash. I worked with Cliff and Bill, and obviously Billy, Cliff and Billy and Joe Brown. They were all great artists and people that were close to me. It was a privilege working with them. It really was.
Yeah. And is the recording very different from back in the day to now? I imagine it's totally different, is it? Or
Yeah, absolutely, completely different. In my days, it was four tracks, not 30 or 60 or 100 tracks. You can actually turn a record into, or turn the 100 tracks into a record. But in our days, it was four tracks you had. It went on to be eight tracks and then 16 tracks in the studio. But initially, four tracks. So you had the orchestra and bits and pieces of the orchestra. Then you had the singer probably on one. Obviously, one I would have been on one mic. The backing singers would have been on the other. And also in those days, because you had a big orchestra, sometimes if it had like a 30-piece or a 20-piece orchestra, they all need paying. And if it went over union time, if they went over time, they had to be paid. And so in other words, when you made a recording, it had to be right. You had to get it within about, if you didn't get it in about 5 takes, they were starting to go, oh, here we go. So it was quite a different way. Nowadays, you can take your time like I do in my studio, not in my studio, but when I work, I spend hours sometimes with sounds and things. But in those days, it didn't make any difference really, because if you're forced to do something, you can do it. And nowadays, you don't worry so much. I was listening to some of the production on the American Top 50 today, and it really is fantastic production and production ideas, and sound wise, the way the sound comes in, which is very, very different to those early 4-track records, but they still have their place in musical history, and some of them still sound great anyway.
Yeah, many of them are timeless, aren't they? And it's probably
Yeah.
down to, as you were saying, it's sort of more of a live performance, isn't it? Because you have to get it within 5 takes, as you were saying.
Yeah, you did. There was no, and TV, when you went on TV, it was live. You were going to appear in front of when I worked on the Oh Boy show, that was a live show every Saturday, and it came out, and there were millions watching. There were only three stations, so you had the whole of the country, all young people, almost everybody watching you. So you had to get it dead right. You had an orchestra. You couldn't go back and say take two. That had to be done on the moment. But it was a great curve of, it was a great sort of great way to learn, to make you more dependable and also to work harder at getting it right. Nowadays, you can, when I'm recording now, I can, I sing I'll sing like, I don't know about, and I'll say, stop a second, just go back on that, and then we go back on it, and then I said, I don't like the way that word, but in the end, yeah, you can get a perfect product, but it doesn't make it. There's not much difference really to, you sometimes it's better to be instantaneous. And those Elvis Presley records, for example, they were instantaneous. They weren't sort of like we do today, like, Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars up in the top of the charts. They probably spent hours doing that and getting it dead right. Nothing was going to be wrong on it. And it's a great track. But all I'm saying is, it's probably no better than "Don't Be Cruel" by Elvis Presley. In fact, it's not as good.
Yeah, I mean, the rock and roll era, it was a fantastic era, wasn't it? You had some fantastic artists. Who were some of your favorites?
Obviously Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis, the obvious ones really. Buddy Holly, I love Buddy. Yeah, Jerry Lee, I love Jerry Lee, and but Elvis was for me was because like there were much more. We were very similar in some ways. Our backgrounds were similar in some ways, and also I think how we his approach to things was probably very similar to mine, and he loved what he did. That came through, and he had a great passion for what he was singing, and that was one of the highlights, I think, of that first album that Elvis ever brought when he brought it out. Some of the tracks, they were fantastic tracks, and they didn't have hundreds of tracks to record on. They were probably recorded in 3 takes, and the voice wasn't touched up. It was just there, and the bass player had to play dead on had to play it right, but it worked. It worked.
Definitely. So is this your farewell tour? Am I correct in saying?
No, 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 no. And the only thing that will stop me is health issues. Yeah, if I, when you get older, obviously you're fighting your health in a way, because nobody, I don't care who they are, gets past a certain age without having some kind of, illness or frailty in their body. So you keep your fingers crossed you're okay. But I'd like to continue, certainly for at least another 7 or 8 7 years, I would say. I'd
Brilliant.
like to go for.
And when you're writing your music, do songs just come to you, or do you have to sit down and really think about it, or is it a combination of the two?
It's a combination of the two. Sometimes a song will come to you very, very quickly. Two Eye Streaming came fairly quickly, and but then one of the beauties, I think, of the modern age is that on my iPhone I type up all the lyrics, and and then I see them in print. Now, when you're in the old days, you used to write. You'd be writing all the lyrics down, and they'd be all right, but I don't think I never looked at them as critically as I do now. And not only because I'm older, but because they're there in print, they're in black and white. And so I use my iPhone to work. I get ideas. I work out. I'll very often sing. I'll be singing away and realize I'll change a chord sequence in my head. And a lot of the time, very often when I'm walking the dog in the forest, there's a forest opposite my home, and I walk in that, And I'll be going through sometimes. I go through arrangements, and I think, oh no, I'll change that line, I'll change that bass line. So it goes on all the time, and I can't stop it. And not that I want to, but I can't. I wake up with music in my head, and I will go to bed tonight we undoubtedly looking at lyrics or with again listening in my head to music or listening to the tracks that I've recorded on the iPhone. But the iPhone has been an incredible help to me and to all songwriters, I would imagine. Any young person writing now, you can just type it all out and it's brilliant. And you can get it printed up within seconds. So it's very helpful. But yeah, mine's I love it. I go for song titles. Titles to me are one of the most important things. You must have a reasonable title. You can't go, you got to be careful with titles. And most people, when you've got a really, if it's a great song, invariably, not always, but invariably, you'll find it's a pretty good title it had.
Yeah, definitely. So, what do you think's the best song you've recorded in your career?
Oh, I don't know. I think the technically what I was happy with was a song called "You'll Never Be So Wrong," which was on one of my albums some time ago. And excuse me, I've got a runny nose here. I'm just getting over a bad cold. But yeah, "You'll Never Be So Wrong" was written originally for Kim, but I recorded it, I cut it, and I was very pleased with the outcome. But I guess I know it. I suppose in a funny kind of way, "Teenager in Love," because it wasn't the world's best vocal. It never was never intended to be, but it got the message across the way it should be. Your tone and your sound are very important because none of us are singers. None of us. We're not singers. You want to hear a singer, then listen to Pavarotti all night long. But don't expect to hear a great voice from me or from Buddy Holly. Elvis Presley, slightly different. He had an exceptional voice. And Roy Orbison. Me, no. You go if you got or Buddy Holly. Buddy Holly, it really had a weird voice, but it was dead right. It was great. Who cares? It was great. And sometimes that if you must have your own tone, and my one's not bad. It's not as good as obviously. I'm very critical of my own work, but it works, and somehow I get it across to the audience. The things I want to get across. But yeah, so none of us have got, as I say. If you want to hear a good singer, go to the opera and listen to the technical boys. If you don't, you just want to hear someone who's got an expression in his voice, then you can come and hear us as well.
So, when you were first starting out, is it the same with a lot of singers where you try and impersonate the singers you like, and then you find your own style? Or
Yeah,
how did it work for you?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I based myself on Elvis, no question about that. And Jerry Lee Lewis, I copied, and Buddy Holly. Now and again, you little phrase that they did, and whoever came along at the time, you would be influenced. Elvis was my biggest influence, and I always wanted to sing like that. And so I tried in my own way for years to try on several years, but eventually, by accident, I suppose, or whatever, not by accident, but it evolved. And I had my own voice, which is kind of weird. I wanted to sing exactly like Elvis, but I couldn't do it, and I had to be Marty Wilde, and that works, and it works great for me now because what I do now, I don't write songs like anybody else. Not really. I don't. I get influenced, obviously we all do, but I'm in my own world with my songs, which is an important thing if you can achieve that. And I'm also, I think that my voice is better, not better in a technical sense, but it's better for expression, and it's me. What I do now is me, and that I'm very happy with. Not that I'm brilliant, but I'm happy that it's me singing. Me singing, me being me instead of trying to be somebody else. I mean, all singers are the same. Whether you're Cliff Richard or whether you're Marty Wilde, Billy Fury, or whoever you are, you will always have an idol. Every singer has got an idol. Every singer will take some kind of lesson from their person that they idolize. But in the end, most people, even when they don't want to be, they end up themselves. I mean, sometimes, I remember when Bob Dylan was in his heyday, but then after that, came a load of people that sang a little bit like him, but they weren't. They in the end, they maybe the one or two that stay like that, but he had his own style. He had a peculiar voice, most peculiar voice, but it was fantastic. So, what can you say?
Yeah, and of course you mentioned Elvis. What was that like when he passed away? You obviously remember. Was it a big shocking event for people who don't remember?
I think it was just sad. I think it was sad for a very large part of the world. It went right round the world very quickly. Um, and I think that I can remember we got the news, and in America it would have been earlier in the day for them. I think it would probably have been, I don't know, maybe 1 o'clock or something in the afternoon or something like that when they got the news. But we didn't get our news until later. And I remember it was winter time, I think it was, but I know it was dark. And I remember there was Kim and I. She was much younger then, of course, and there was Kim and I and Mum, and I was sitting around, and everyone was very nostalgic because it was the end of a great era. I mean, he was a truly mind-blowing style and everything else. His style. Um, it's like when John Lennon, when Lennon died, and people of that kind of stature, there is a kind of a little bit of kind of an emptiness for a while. But then, of course, you've got their records, you have their music to listen to again. So, I listen to Elvis now and again, not a great deal, but I still do. I still love what I hear. And obviously, I listen to a lot of Lennon. I've always been a big fan of John Lennon, the songs, obviously. So yeah, I mean, Elvis's death was a big impact, but life goes on, and you move on, and you've got great memories.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for sharing them tonight on the show. It's been great speaking to you, Marty.
It was my great privilege. It's nice. I mean, at my old age now, it's nice to be that people are even remotely interested in me. So I'm very humbled. Thank you.